This is all coming down through the wireless. Oh, hang on. Wi-Fi, Vodafone. Is that the right Wi-Fi?
Yeah. Connecting audio.
How much use have you got? What do you got? It should be okay for half an hour. Oh, I'll put it in it.
Okay. Fine. The only thing is I'm moderator, so I can't keep all quiet. It will be recorded. Okay. Yeah, maybe.
We're good? Can't change the past. How is Teshuva possible? This year focuses on addressing the very possibility of Teshuva and the mechanics of it, how Teshuva actually works. In the process, we will also address the apparent problem: how is it possible for davening to work? How can tefillah, for example, change a gezerah? So let's begin with what I think seems possible. When it comes to ben Adam l'chaveira, for example, for as long as the aveira has not been rectified and corrected, for example, he still holds the stolen item. Teshuva is not shame. Teshuva is not a possibility. Likewise, for as long as you've not been matthias kaveira, you've not appeased the person you hurt, Teshuva is not shame. The Mishnah in Yuma, aveira sheben Adam l'chaveira, ein yom ha'kippurim l'kapa, ha'tshira. In order for Teshuva and kapara process to really work. If the person is still distressed, if the hurt is still there, that means the offense is still ongoing. And Teshuva for an ongoing aveira is nonsensical. Okay? That is, one must first be masaken the chet. That's poshut. You must first be masaken the chet. Says Shlomo in Shlomo Melech in Keheles. There are crooked things, me'uvas, shelo yuchal lo yuchal liskoi. There are some crooked things which cannot be corrected. Some things cannot be made right again. Such as, there's a Mishnah in Chagiga, Rabbi Shimon ben Manasseh oimer, Eizeu me'uva she'eino yochal yisaken. What's an example of something crooked that cannot be corrected? If somebody were to do an avera, not like im toima begoine begoes, it's not to steal, you can return it, be put right, correct the chet, and then do tshuva. Whereas if somebody's bala erva, if somebody were to, says Rashi, bring pesulin into kaisel, there is now a result of that avera. The avera has left its mark in the world. Lefichach, says Rashi, ein avonosav nimchokin b'tshuva. His averas cannot be erased with tshuva. You cannot erase that avera. And says the Gemara, likewise, even if not the Mishnah's case when a mamzer results, even if mamzer doesn't know, the act makes the isha now also to her husband. She may no longer remain in her marriage. This man's avera has made a change in the world. There now exists a new material and halachic reality. Seemingly, one cannot simply rewrite history and delete a material change in the world. Seemingly, full tshuva for this and similar cases should not be achieved. It should not work. Tshuva shouldn't work. Yet, nevertheless, we find that this fact does not preclude tshuva from working. There's another Mishnah. Mishnah in Yevamis, Mi sheyesh lo bein mikol mokim. Somebody who has a son under any circumstances. That's what it means. even a mamzer. Says the Mishnah, that means a man was over a Gilei Arayos of Issachari's, which produced a mamzer. Says the Mishnah, that child would be chayav al makosoi val kilelosoi. That child, if that child were to hit and draw blood or give a klala to that father, that child would be chayav misa like anyone else. It's his son in every sense. Ask the Gemara, why? Why should the child be chayav? Let's apply here the principle, v'nosi be'amcha lo sa'or. You cannot curse a nosi amongst Klal Yisrael, and that issa to curse only applies, but oise maise amcha, when it's somebody who is within the fold of Klal Yisrael, who's not a Rasha. And speaks out Rashi, and this father evidently is not a tzaddik. This child came about through an Issachari's. This child is a mamzer, therefore, this should be a case where not oise maise amcha. It's not bechlal included in the cases where if you give a curse, you should be chayav misa. And says the Gemara, when he does tshuva. Ask the Gemara straight away, the high bar tshuva, he can do tshuva. What about that Mishnah in Chagiga? The Reb Shimon ben Manasseh says, it can't be rectified. That's the classic example. And here we've got exactly that case, where this person was over the Vera, which reduced a mamzer, and we're saying it, yes, the son would be chayav if he were to curse him, because the father did tshuva. How? Answers the Gemara, hashta miha oisim ma'aseh. But the fact remains, right now, he's a tzaddik. Right now, he's done tshuva. Says Rashi, hoil v'shol, since he's done tshuva, oisim ma'aseh amchu, onahi nami davoy negole v'nesver, and granted that the result of his avera is out there in existence, and which he cannot be mistaken. But once having done tshuva, he's a tzaddik again. He can achieve full tshuva. And so, if the son were to be Makala or hit his father, he'd be chayav. This brings our problem to the point. One Mishnah clearly categorizes the case as one you can't be mistaken, and I think we agreed at the beginning it was straightforwardly obvious that until you be mistaken a hate, tshuva shouldn't work. And we have another Mishnah as elaborated by the Gemara that states that very case, definitely he can achieve a full tshuva. So here's how the Ramchal asks the question in Mesilas Yesharim. You must learn the same. Starting this Sunday, 20 minutes before winter. Yeah. Ramchal gets the problem across very powerfully. Kidifi Shuras Hadin Mamish, according to strict justice, it should be the case that Shaloyeh Tikkun Lachet Klal. There should be no tikkun for any of it. No tikkun for any of it. How can you undo that which you've already done? It's already happened. Imagine somebody were to kill another person. You understand? You're going to bring him back to life? How do you correct that? Hayuchal, says the Ramchal, can you remove the done deed from reality? That's our problem. Can you remove the done deed from reality? Ramchal now tries to resolve the problem. Says the Ramchal, granted, this is tricky, granted from the perspective of Shuras Hadin, strict justice. Indeed, there is no tikkun for any of it. one cannot remove hamaisa also min hametzias. However, says the Ramchal, here's where Midas Harachimim comes into operation. Midas Harachimim provides that Teshuva tinosin lachaitim, Teshuva is given to sinners, the chesed gomel, absolute chesed. And it's mechanic. The way it works, says the Ramchal, is like with Nadorim. Shetichoshi v'kiras harotzen k'kiras hamaisa. The regret which one has, one wants to, the change of mind should act to change the deed. Explain. Exactly as we find with Nadorim, where one genuinely regrets making the neder and sincerely wishes you could turn back time, turn back the clock and not have made it, you can undo it lemafreya retroactively. Halachically speaking, one does go back in time and corrects the record. Likewise, he says, where one truly regrets one's actions, wishes you could turn back time, that history would genuinely be different, you can be oika the averas retroactively. And he's got a pasuk. There's a pasuk in Yeshaya, V'sar avonecha v'chatofet kupa. And the V'sar avonecha means your averas will be removed. Says the Ramchal, Sheha'ovein sar mamash min hamatzias. He takes that to mean that the avera literally is removed from the matzias. V'neka is uprooted, undone. But Masha Achshom it's time, it's not Masha Affair because it was now his regret and his wish that it had never taken place. And he finishes with a chesed vadai she'eno yeshura. That's definitely a chesed, it's not shura sadeh. That's Ramchal's solution. But there are serious problems with the Ramchal's solution. Here's three. First, by a neder, you created an issa on yourself based upon your rot, how neder works. Later, realizing the full implications, you realize your rot at the time was lacking, there was information you weren't aware of. And with this current awareness, you realize you would not then have made the neder. So the issa you subjectively brought upon yourself, you can now clarify with your current rotten, your personal dazzled state, your rotten state would have been different. You can undo it retroactively. That's very different to when there's an established fact and a part of objective reality out there, where however much you might want it to be different, your subjective wants are not going to change the facts. The Ramchal's words were lahote hamaisa ha'asa. How do you undo an action? Second problem. Rabbi Chaim Wasserman pointed out by Chet Adam Harishon, by the Eitz Hadat, he was told, eat it, brings Misa to the world. Now surely the great Adam Harishon performed and achieved a fullest possible truth in the remaining 930 years. He did a very full truth. And yet, we're all still mortal. And I'm reliably informed, childbirth is still painful. That's it. It'll be money. And I'm reliably informed, people still work hard for a living. The Ze'esa Pecha Teichel Lechem still stands. What happened to Teshuva? What happened to Ha'ovoin Sar Mamish Me Matzias of the Ramchal, that the Avera is removed from the Matzias? It's a chazal. I'm going to slightly quicker. Yes. When the Malachim mistook the seeing his heels at the level of the Shekhinah of the bench.
He was Rubinstein. The whole point was that he was trying to get back to the other big state that
Okay.
he's gotten to now.
Okay.
Think of it.
Okay, so as a first Chazal, he did Teshuva, but I'm bypassing it at the moment. He did. So ask Rabbi Chaim how to make sense. True, as Rabbi Chaim notes, the Droshas Haran says that these were not punishments. They were not punishments. They were statements of fact. Hashem is telling him, the world is now in a lower state. As a result, the world has changed. As a result of eating from the Eitzadas, long discussion. It's a natural consequence of the Avera rather than a punishment. It's a new reality, fine. Still, clearly, it remains the case that objective states of the world cannot be changed or altered by Teshuva. History cannot just be rewritten by Teshuva, even one on the Madrega of an admiration Teshuva. So again, if you cannot rectify, you cannot be a Masak and Chet, how the Teshuva works. And third problem, we find that Charot on past deeds seems to work equally the other way too. There's a Gemara in Kiddushin. If somebody's a tzaddik gomer his whole life, and at the end of his life, he rebels. Says the Gemara, Ibeid Esor Shonesh, he loses his earlier Zechusim and Mitzvahs. They're gone. The Gemara says, what? How could that be? So when we're talking about when Toya Al Rishonis, says Rashi's Mischarik, if he genuinely, sincerely regrets the mitzvahs which he did, he wishes he had never done those mitzvahs. He wishes he lived a totally different life, all the whole process. Says the Gemara, he loses them. So ask Rabbi Chanan Wasserman, it works equally the other way. And that's definitely not Midas HaChesed, to take away somebody's mitzvahs off them. He asked this question to the Chavetz Chaim. The Chavetz Chaim suggested an answer. Rabbi Chanan Wasserman was happy with it. Rabbi Chanan Wasserman suggested other answers. The Birkas of Ron suggests answers. The Achronim are busy trying to answer this. However, in my humble opinion, the question is stronger than the proposed answers. And Ron, I think we should embrace the full implications of the question, the same as Ponimiopos. I'm prepared to accept. You ask the question, what happened to the Averas? Can you remove a Maisa that's taken place in the past? The answer is no, you cannot. History does not get rewritten. The past is never erased. And still, for all that, as I will show, there is no difficulty for Teshuva and performance. There's no contradiction or tension between Averas remaining fully in place and all being able to achieve a full Teshuva. But to see that, we need to understand what Teshuva actually is, what happens when one does Teshuva, and to do that, we need to look a little bit at the middle of what we are. So let's quickly just touch briefly on the metaphysics of personal identity. There is a problem of continuity over time, personal continuity over time. How do objects or entities persist over time? Okay, there's a famous ship of Theseus paradox. The Greek philosopher Plutarch wrote about the famous ship of Theseus. Theseus was an ancient Greek general. He would sail on the little ships and he would go around, very successful, beating people up and winning battles, triumph. And when he came back to Athens to commemorate his triumph, they wanted to keep his ship, these wooden big boats that the Greek army used, and they kept one of them in the harbor in Athens as a kind of a museum sort of piece. With time, a piece of wood, plank, started to become a bit, rotten a bit thing. So they took it out and they replaced it with another one. A few years later, another piece of wood, another wooden plank needed replacing. Yet later, another one, till eventually all the pieces in the ship of Theseus had been replaced. And the question then became, is that still the ship of Theseus? Over the course of time, every single part of that ship had been replaced. Is it still the ship of Theseus? According to Plutarch, the philosophers of the day debated the question was split roughly half-half. In the 17th century, Thomas Hobbes added another layer of complexity. he imagined a young sailor at the time, and each time the ancient Greeks removed one piece from the ship and chucked it in the bin and replaced it, he took it. And with time, he collected them all up to the point that, a bit worn and damaged, he had his own ship. So now there's two ships. Which is the ship of Theseus? Okay. First part gets replaced, yeah, for sure, it's this ship. Second part, for sure. There comes a point, this is where it gets quite uncomfortable, okay? Eventually, is it? Really? Now let's talk about us. We are not precisely identical from one moment in time to another. Rather than wooden planks of ships, think about the cells of our bodies, continually dying, being regenerated and replaced. And even the so-called permanent cells, called permanent because they don't reproduce, but they're still constantly undergoing changes. Same for psychological continuity. We're continually undergoing change, sometimes gradual, not so noticeable, sometimes very noticeable. And what about spiritually? How much connection do we really have to the newborn baby of some time back? What holds us together? What connects the stages of our lives? What unifies the different stages of our lives? What makes it be the case that a tiny newborn is the same person as the 10-year-old, is the same person as the 30-year-old, and the 90-year-old, and onwards? At this point, we could break off into a deep discussion of the soul, its component parts, nefesh, ruach, and neshama, and so on, its connection, interaction with the body that makes up this hybrid creature that is part physical, part spiritual, which was us. That's not for now. I think that you get the idea I'm gesturing towards. But let's bring it a little bit closer to the discussion of Teshuva. There was an ancient Greek, Epicharmus, Greek philosopher, tells a comical tale of a fellow who borrowed money. He's a lawyer, but he's approached for payment by the lender. So he responds to him that since man is constantly changing, we don't survive from one moment to the next. The debtor concludes that I'm not the same person who borrowed the money. The lender then punches him in the face. And when he objects, he says, well, according to your logic, I'm not the one who punched you. We laugh. The borrower's argument's absurd. Plainly, there's nothing there to indicate significant enough change that he's a different person. But clearly, there are some changes that do affect the new person. Shmuel HaNovi anoints Shaul as future melech and informs him of a series of events that he can expect to happen to him, culminating in Ufogato Chaim, and you will come across a group of prophets with Salta Allah and Ruach Hashem, and Ruach Hashem will come over you. Vishnabesa Imam, and you will prophesy along with them. V'nehepachto leish acher, you will be transformed into a different person. This, says the Rambam, by the way, was the common thing for all people when they became a Navi for the first time, were conscious of genuinely being transformed into a different person. So we see certainly there can be some changes that are so profound as to quite literally render one a different person, at least in the relevant sense. There's a Gemara in Rosh Hashanah. It says Rabbi Yitzchak, 4 things Mekaren, Gizardina Shalom, can tear up the Gizardin of it. 4 things. Elohim, Stoker, Tza'oka, Tefillah, Shinoi Hashem, name change, and Shinoi Maisa. Essentially, that's true with Tefillah and Stoker. Tzedakah requires much further explanation. I'm going to set it aside. Tza'oka, crying, Tefillah, we'll focus on Tefillah. I'll come back to it soon. Shinoi Hashem, says the Rambam, change your name. You don't have to change your name. Change your name. It's a superficial change, isn't it? Says the Rambam, Koloima, as though to say, what the message is saying is, Sha'ani acher, I'm now someone else. Ve'eni oisai ha'ish she'osa oisam ha'maisa, and not the man who did those things. So the Ritva, Shinoi Maisa, likewise. Shinoi Maisa doesn't mean you stop doing the Averas, that's obvious. Shinoi Maisa means he changes his whole way of life so thoroughly that Kaloima shehu adam acher legamri. He's a completely different. Elaborates the Maharal. These four are changes to the fundamental makeup of the person. Changes that go to the core of a person and are sufficient to effect a change of person. Hunasa ishacher, at least in the relevant sense. Rabbi Yoina in Shari Teshuva says the following. When a person listens to Musa from Chachamim, he takes it seriously, he gets the message, he's ready to change. Such a person who does Teshuva, Berega Koton, in a small moment, God can go out from darkness into great light. Also, Teshuva, he achieves Teshuva, the same expression. From Shmuel, you find it everywhere throughout the Shed Machmir when you want to start looking for it. The Ner Pachla is transformed into another person. And it couldn't be otherwise that this is how Teshuva works. Ravron Brzezinski, Toras Avram, says, the concept of Teshuva is not possible otherwise. Unless it's possible, you're able to say about the person, the person who did the virus, he's gone. That human being no longer exists. This Bar Teshuva is an entirely different person. With this insight, we can now easily understand an otherwise very puzzling Chazal. Rashi brings it out of the Yislach, brings it from a Medrash. Gimel Moichel and Rabbi Nasem. 3 people, their aveiros are forgiven. One's straightforward, understand? More straightforward. Gersh in the sky. 2, Ha'oyle Ligdula, one who rises up to a senior position. Yerushalmi and Bikurim has this slightly different version. Has Chochem Shenes Mana. That's a new Rav. A new Rav. Most of all its aveiros. But I know you say Israel. That's when he gets married. Why? But we can all of them for getting married. All your aveiros gone. But right, taking a new style, all aveiros gone. Says the Maharal, the reason is called Elu Bria Chadoshohim. They become a new creature. They're a new person. When we Kivin Dana Bria Hashem, they're not the previous one. What have they got to do with those aveiros? And he takes you through it. Gersh in the sky is straightforward. It's a completely different person. The Gemara Nivamas, the Kotten Shanoda Dami, like reborn. Nossi, who somebody rides up to a new station. This is important. Kaiden, beforehand, he was a single individual person, a private person. Now he's Nechshav K'moy HaKlal. He's a part of the clan. He is now the clan. He's Yoisame Odom Prot. He's no longer a private person. And I know he's this one who gets married. Before that, he was literally a half body, half person, and now he's full. So we started the question, you can't change the past. How is Teshuva possible? The answer is, indeed, you can't change it. We change the person. Why should I be held to account? Why should I be spiritually damaged? Why should I be punished for what that fellow did in the past? And so we turn now to davening. How does davening work? Hashem is HaTov HaMeitiv. He's going to give you what's right for you. And if he's going to do something for you, even if you don't ask for it, he's going to do what's right for you. And if Hashem is going to something and you nag and nudge, why should that change anything? Why would Hashem give you what's not good for you? As parents, as people, we can be nagged and worn down. We can be nagged into even doing what we know is not the best thing. And that's pretty much a summary of parenting. I vividly recall I walked once with my father in a shop, mentioned the Cooks Cash and Carry back in the day. As a little boy, and he was there for whatever he was there, but there was also huge aisles of food. And I remember there was a particular toy, I forget which now, but it's obvious I could not live without it. No way in my life I could see. And I nudged, and I really nagged him. I forgot what the toy is, but I remember what he said. Anything for a peaceful life. Right? I got the toy. You can do that with a parent, but it doesn't work that way with a bonus. It's a bit like nagging somebody to make 2 + 2 = 5. They might eventually say it, but you can't make it be so. That's the problem with Tefillah. Says the Sefer HaYikrim, and the Bnei Soska brings it Shem Talmidi about Shem, but exactly the same points. The gezerah which Hashem made before was for that particular person, exactly as that particular person was. By your davening, by the davening and reaching to the Rebbeinu Shalom accomplishment, the process of davening, you change. And says the Sefer exactly the same for Teshuva. And he brings that Gemara, that's how Shnei Hashem works, Hashem and Maisa works, that's how it all works. You change. That gezerah was never said about this new you. The gezerah was never made for the new you. That's how it works. We change. Hashem's Rotzen doesn't change. There has to now be a new gezerah addressing a new reality, a new you. The way our Maisim generally, and our Tefillah specifically, and our Avodas HaKodesh operate is not by rewriting history or by changing the world. It changes who we are now. People are not static. We don't stay identical across time. We're in flux, constantly changing in many ways. We are always a work in progress. But I held one view last year or yesterday, doesn't mean I should today or tomorrow, that my character is this way does not mean that I need to be that way. Let us utilize a special period of time, Elul, in the run-up to the Yom Noraim, to grow and develop, to allow our tefillahs to change us, to literally transform into a new person, and so be comfortably deserving Meshuras Hadin, to have a Kasiva B'Chasima. Yeah.
Happiness of witness. I said, no, you couldn't get into that.